Hi, friend. Welcome back to another episode of the Better Events Podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Logan Clements, and this week I am joined by a guest co-host, Ryan. You might recognize them from some of our other podcast events that we've done, like the Better Events Conference, but I'm really excited to have them join me for the next couple episodes while Mary is out on maternity leave. So this week we are focusing on one of the types of events that Ryan plans, which are these public-facing events. And we are going to dive into what makes them so engaging, what are some lessons learned that you can apply to your public-facing events, or maybe even your corporate and private events. So it is a great episode filled with some tips and tricks from our real-world experience. So without further ado, let's get into the episode.
Welcome to the Better Events Podcast. Join two event strategists, Logan Clements and Mary Davidson, who believe we can all create, host, and attend better events. In this podcast, you will learn about event strategy and actions that you can use today as an event host, planner, or manager. Hear directly from the people who are creating innovative and inspiring events today and tomorrow, and grow your business along the way. Now, let's get started, and thanks for listening to the Better Events Podcast.
Hi, friend. Welcome back to another episode of the Better Events Podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Logan Clements, and this week I am thrilled to introduce you to my new guest co-host for the next couple episodes. But I'm going to tease it before I do. I do want to plug that before Marian went on leave, we did record an amazing workshop about how to start an event business. And so I'm linking to that in the show notes. It is a great kind of like masterclass 5-hour on-demand course with everything that we've learned from running our business over the years. So whether you're thinking about starting an event business, going out freelance on your own, or maybe you've been in business but are just looking for that extra support, that workshop is a great place to start. So please check it out. It's in the link in our show notes. But without further ado, I'm excited to introduce our guest co-host this week. I am joined by the lovely Ryan Criswell, is the founder and head cutie in charge of Cute Story Events, an event planning and management company creating thoughtful, well-run experiences for mission-driven brands, businesses, and communities. With 15 plus years of experience, Ryan specializes in turning big ideas into organized, memorable events with creativity, care, and a little magic. And I honestly think they have the best title in the industry. So Ryan, I'm going to hype you up, but anything else you want to add to that lovely introduction?
Yeah, thanks so much. I love that people love my title. It's like, why not have fun with it? I think I would just add that I do a lot in the queer community as well. So a lot of my events are focused on the queer community, whether that's queer networking apps or book clubs, things like that. So that's one of the things I love doing.
I love it. And you might recognize Ryan has been at many of our Better Events conferences, virtual and in person, and been a long-time listener of the podcast. So I'm just excited to have you on. If you are new here, listeners, Mary is my regular co-host. She is on maternity leave. And so I'm going to have some fun over the next couple episodes, inviting amazing guests like Ryan to guest co-host with me for a series of episodes. So Ryan, we always like to start our episodes with a conversation starter. So this week's is, what's a small moment at an event that always makes you smile?
Yeah, for me, I really like when I'm able to take kind of a breather and stop running around. And when I just actually look at the event and people are enjoying it and having fun, I feel like every time it kind of blows my mind, like, oh my gosh, people are enjoying what I put together. And yeah, I just like seeing other people happy, I guess. That's my favorite moment. What about you, Logan?
Oh, I mean, my sports, it's always like when I can see the kids who have a moment of like, you can just tell they're just really into being on the big screen, or even just like seeing their favorite athlete. I have some core memories of like little kids that I was like, oh, this is why I do what I do. This is why I run around and do all the crazy stuff. Like just this one kid now has this memory, hopefully forever, you know, of getting to meet their favorite athlete or talk to them even from like court to stands. But I'm with you. I think it's anytime you can see the people like enjoying what you're doing, because a lot of what we do is a lot of hustle and maybe not so sexy of things, that then to see someone and be like, oh, like that's why I was up late last night, or that's why I was doing this, is just so that someone could have some enjoyment.
Yeah, I totally agree. I was into sports when I was a kid, and I met Charles Barkley once, and I was shaking. I was so nervous, but I always remember that, just being like 8 years old and him coming up and like signing my little jersey. And I actually got to meet Ahmad Rashad as well. I was really into Ahmad Rashad, the sportscaster.
Wow.
So I have a picture with him as well. So I always like remember those fondly. So yeah, thank you for putting that all together for us little kids.
Yeah. Oh, and I just love picturing like little tiny Ryan and really tall Charles Barkley. It was probably really cute. Amazing. Well, this week we're going to be talking into something that's right up your wheelhouse, Ryan. So, talking about trying to design these public facing events that actually engage people. And we thought this was an important topic for you, listener, because maybe you're not planning a public facing event, but I think there's some lessons learned that you can apply to your internal, your corporate, your more private event, but there's kind of some similarities. Then there's also nuances. I feel like I meet a lot of folks that want to get into some of the more public facing festivals, concerts, even my sports that I do, or any kind of like community event. And so I think there's going to be nuggets here for you. But Ryan, you might know we like to start nice and broad on the podcast. So to kick us off, when we say public facing events, what types of events are we actually talking about?
So for me, a public facing event is something that usually is free or people can walk into the event. So it might be, one of those festivals you go to, a citywide parade, things like that, where it's, everyone kind of knows about it, everyone's invited, and you're also probably dealing with a lot more people, and also maybe people who aren't informed about the event. It may be big enough where they just see it, kind of stumble upon it, and see a line forming and they want to go into it. So I feel those are a little different because you have a broader audience as opposed to a corporate or a ticketed. These people they're either employees that have to go to this event, or they've been marketed to specifically, and so they kind of have an idea of what to expect, and they have higher expectations, I think, too, for ticketed events. So public facing is really broad events. It can really be anything with anybody attending.
Oh, I love that. I think I broaden it slightly because I'll probably want to apply some of my sports info to it because that is ticketed. But I think you hit on one point too, is a lot of people bring other people to that event who maybe have no context for what they're walking into. And it's interesting trying to create an engaging experience for the super fan and the person who's like, I've never even heard of this sport or this team or anything, and trying to make sure both of them walk away with a positive experience. So I'm excited to learn from you. I definitely haven't done as much as a planner on the public facing side. I've been an attendee. I am notorious for loving to do that thing where I walk in to random markets or festivals or anything. Like I love to just be nosy and poke my head in. So, and I've gone to a number of your events that you've hosted. So I think you'll have an extra interesting perspective here. How would you say that you hinted at it, but just to dive a little deeper, how public facing events are different from a ticketed or a corporate or a private event?
Yeah, definitely. So private event, we're kind of thinking of maybe a wedding or maybe a fundraiser event where they're kind of bringing in their members or specific people that they know are interested in a cause. And usually people are willing to pay a ticket price because they know that it's going to a good cause, or they know what kind of activities the event is going to include. So I know some people, there's that website Fever Tickets or something, and they do these ticketed events and you go see Van Gogh projected on the wall or something like that. So this is something that private events are usually invested in, I would say, either financially or emotionally, if it's a wedding or if it's a fundraiser. So I feel that's one. And then the corporate is kind of like I mentioned before, it's probably an employee retreat or it might be a corporate conference. And so the goal of going is usually different. So I used to do marketing conferences, and the goal for people attending was kind of to make connections, get sales. So they're kind of going in with, I have to work. They want to have things they can enjoy. They want to have a drink and go to the after party and things like that, but they're really there for business. And, some ticket events I think are a little bit more for fun, or you're more invested, as a person and not just an employee.
Yeah, and I think a cool part too would be that it's also more related to fun or your like personal interests probably for going to public facing. And it's not networking, but I think to your point, some of the like events you've done, I feel like it's also though about acknowledging community and creating community for people, or people being seen for whatever they're passionate about. Like I'm just thinking of like your book fairs that you did, where it's like I would go because I want to buy books, but also maybe I want to meet other people who love books and book paraphernalia and all kinds of things. And same thing when I think sports, it's like some people just want to cheer their team on, but they also want to like do the wave with everyone because it makes you feel part of something larger than you. But also entertainment's at the core. If you're not entertained, if you're made to wait in long lines and things like that, you don't have a boss telling you have to stay, like you can go. It's like the attention economy a little bit more in these public facing events. Do you feel like that comes up for you?
Oh yeah, I love that. Yeah, I feel like with the public facing events, yeah, you do have this autonomy to be able to leave if you don't like it, or if it's too loud, or if you can't, you're waiting in line for 4 hours to get a donut. You can definitely leave. And yeah, I think doing community events are definitely my favorite. Like you were saying, I did do a grown up book fair. I think it was 2 years ago now. And that was something I wanted to create out of, yeah, fun and passion. And the people who showed up were book nerds. They wanted to meet new authors. They wanted to do our yearbook photo booth that we had. We had drag queen story time, and we had snacks and things like that included. So I think it definitely was marketed to a specific audience, but there were definitely people who brought their friend along who had no idea what was going on. So, going back to that investment, how do you keep those people engaged when they may not know? And for that one, I specifically wanted to have a lot of different activities. So that's why we had the photo booth. Everybody loves a photo booth, and drag queen story time for adults. I feel like you don't really see that. So if they knew that was coming up, and just bringing in some different vendors that they may have not known about, that even if you're not super into reading, you could be like, oh my gosh, one of my community members wrote this book and I want to learn about it or get involved in writing as well. So just, it can be a lot more open, I think, with those public events. And that one was a ticketed event. But I think it was like a low entry cost, but I definitely provided like perks that you would get with the ticket. So, which I think some of those other private events, do include, like, hey, you'll get dinner or something like that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. Just thinking through engagement, everyone, our listeners are kind of always looking for tips of how to make their event more engaging, and just kind of thinking through, I'd love for you to start with some examples of what meaningful engagement means at some of these public facing events. You mentioned photo booth. We love a photo booth and we love perks, but any other ones to add?
Yeah. My favorite way to actually think of those intimate experiences, those kind of, because I feel like the interactive things are the memorable things that they're going to remember. So I always try to think of something unique. And the way I do that is usually just literally talking out loud every kind of idea you can think of. And maybe you've seen an idea at another event that you want to tweak for this event. So, I mean, drag queen story time, I definitely stole that from the bookstores that do it for kids. And I wanted to do the snack. So I did charcuterie, which are little Lunchable boxes basically that people could get. So for that, it was easy to like narrow down on a theme. But yeah, for me, I really just like to brainstorm and think about your audience and think about what is unique maybe to that event. And if you can give them something that they're going to take a picture of or that they can take home, basically, when they start getting hands-on, they're going to be more connected to that activity and to that event. So as far as ideas off the top of my head, it's like really hard, but I think just kind of like putting a twist on some of the standard things can kind of get you started. So if you're doing a bingo, maybe you make it specifically about books or about meeting someone else at the event if it's a networking event. If it's trivia, maybe do one round focused on, the history of affordable housing if you're doing a fundraiser. So yeah, I think brainstorming and just writing down all your ideas. There are some where you're just like, oh my gosh, this is perfect. But you really have to like spitball and nothing is dumb. And honestly, I just think too, like, what would I want to do? What kind of event would I want to attend? What kind of activity would I want to do if I went to an event? So you can start there.
The hands-on one is great. I think I wish some of my, nonprofit or even corporate folks who are trying to create some of that networking or engagement, that I'm always like, give them something to do, like a corporate one of like, even stuffing kits that you're going to donate to a local shelter or something. But I'm like, the monotonous task of doing something with your hands gives you the opportunity to spark conversation with someone. Oh, and there's a community aspect. Like that's a great thing. And I'm just thinking through other public events I've went to, like, even if it's as simple, my community here in Seattle hosts like a seafood music fest every year. And they don't, I mean, it's a public event. We walk through, you don't have to buy a ticket. They have a VIP area. So if I wanted to pay more money to have a place to sit and like extra beverages, I could. But their main thing is they want you to have food at all these amazing food trucks. And they have thought through like, you probably want to sit down somewhere. So even if you're not in the VIP area, in the regular area, they have plenty of places for you to like sit and enjoy and stay farther from the stage so the music's not as loud. And then they have space for the people that want to like really be in their music festival spirit. And that is not as interactive, I would say, with that piece. But I just remember thinking through just like my attendee experience. I think you have to think through, like, I walk in, what do I see? Where am I going? Can I sit down? Do I have trash cans? Like just some of your like basic needs can help make it an experience. And the other reason why I normally go to some of these public events, you talk about drag queen story time at your event, but this local one, I know why I was like, the first time I was like, we have to go, is they had this like fish eating contest, but it's to celebrate like our Nordic roots in my neighborhood. So it was this like I can't even say it. I don't remember the name of it, but it's essentially this like pickled fish that you eat. And it's just one of those things where, yeah, your face says it all, Ryan. Like I was also like, this is kind of gross. It's held in the summer. It's hot. These people are eating pickled fish, but it was like something to go see, like just something like, this is wacky. This is different. I'm not going to see this any other time. Have I considered entering it? Not myself, but I've tried to convince my partner. But like that was a draw for me to be like, why I would go. It had 3 days. I might not be into the music as much, but I was like, we have to go see this. So that's something to think about too. I think public facing events do a lot better job doing that because they have to convince you to come, but you could probably apply that to your private events of having some reason. And maybe you apply this to your expo hall, for example, if you're trying to get people to walk through, but hey, there's this unique thing happening at this unique specific time. I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, so many great ideas. I think definitely for corporate events, you can include some of these, even if they are like you're required to go for work because, you do want to network and you do want to meet other people. And yeah, I think for the nonprofit as well, like these people already know each other or they're there for the same cause. So some of the things I have seen the gathering like community boxes. So, getting like big orders from Costco and just separating those and everybody going out to deliver them together. That works really well when you kind of have external teams meeting, maybe you have a remote team and they're in person, kind of doing that activity together. And then what I've also seen is either doing like a vision board or collage, like a group thing, or you can make your own, or badge decorating. So, kind of having googly eyes or adding the different ribbons of flair, because people will spend 5-10 minutes there and then you're like, oh, what is that? Which one are you using? And then, it starts talking. So it can be really cheap. It can be really easy, really simple. But yeah, something that takes the edge off, I guess, of that anxiety of I'm coming in here. I don't know anybody, I don't just want to stand here at the bar. Let me start putting something together. So yeah, I think, yeah, those unique things too, like the fish eating contest. If you can think of something like that you may never see again, that's definitely always a huge draw.
Yeah, it's wacky, it's different, but yeah, something to like break the ice for people. And we mentioned this, but I'd love to dive a little more that like a lot of people at these public facing events maybe didn't plan on being there. They could have stumbled upon it. They could have had a friend bring them. Like, how does that change the way that you're designing the attendee experience?
Yeah, I honestly had not really thought about this until you brought up this question. And I think, kind of with the book fair where people did bring their friends, hopefully, I mean, food's always a great draw. So if you have food for purchase or free food, giveaways are always great. And an entertainment aspect. So, like you were saying, live music, having a spoken word poet and artist, doing live drawings, something like that, where almost everybody would, at least stop to look at it and be engaged. The photo booth was great, but having a wide variety of not only vendors, but activities. So, if there's multiple things that they can do and get involved in and see, there are a lot of things you can do that are generic to everyone that hopefully, they know it's book fair themed, but maybe they'll find something. We had a couple vendors who were just selling like cool hats. And so maybe they're not like super not into books, but they like these like embellished hats. So just kind of, yeah, having something that almost everybody will like is a good way to start.
Yeah. And I'm thinking too, like, the signage that you have, I mean, we try to be as sustainable as possible, but like anytime you can make it super visible, of what's happening. Again, I'm thinking through, like, I have a local farmers market. They put these beautiful flags in the air and they're not branded at all, but it's just like, when you know the flags are up, like the market is open, and then they take them down when it's closed. But making it super obvious that something's happening. I know that's what usually catches my eye to get me to come in, like clear signage of where to go and what's going on. I think location probably also matters. I don't know, Ryan, if you want to think, if you could speak on that, of like picking the location for your public facing event, of like the more visible, the better. If it's somewhere down in a weird alley, you're probably not going to get as much foot traffic. Again, a lot of these festivals I've been to in my neighborhood benefit from like shutting down the street. So if I want to walk from this side to that side, I got to walk through it. And so that's a great way to get people in. And then just thinking about how I would also think, if I'm hosting a public event, of like how I follow up with these people after. So whether there is a contest or something that I can scan and you're getting my email address to tell me about future events, or there's just a QR code where passively I scan it to find out more if I want to go to more of these events. I think that's something, as an organizer, you're always trying to think of, like, how do I, get people to come back again, or even give me feedback of like what I loved. I feel like, Ryan, I can't remember, but maybe you gave us little cards as we left. There was something I had that said book fair after I went to your event. And I know for like sports, we're always trying to think of how to get fans to come back. Luckily, if there's a ticket, we usually have their email, but there's constantly like giveaways. That's a classic one of like, hey, if you scan this QR code and figure it, scan it, we're going to give you a drawing later, or we'll email you later the winner along with photos from the event or something like that. So just thinking about how you can turn them into more of a fan of your event is something to think about.
Oh, totally. And I'm huge on signage. Because I've been to, I've done a lot of large conferences, and when there's not enough signage, you will lose people. And, even though you think it's super obvious, you'll have 12 signs pointing to the bathroom, people will still ask you. So you can't have enough signage. You can't have enough balloons or person standing at the corner with the sign. The bigger, the better. So yeah, I did have a sign out for my book fair. I had some like streamer type, bunting out there. And then luckily I had a line. So that was kind of drawing some people. And for my book fair, it was luckily to be downtown in an area where people were driving by. I don't necessarily know if anyone, actually, I think, yeah, a couple of people did just walk up and were like, what's going on? Okay, let me get a ticket. But I did another book fair with a bookstore in Puyallup, and they were in kind of definitely a harder to find location. And it was at this church, they had the space, and we had one sign on the main street, and we had a lot of people walking up and being like, what's going on here today? I just saw the balloons and the sign, and like, what is a book fair? Like, what are y'all doing in there? So I think any kind of promotion you can do the day of is super great. And then for retaining fans, I'm a big believer in that as well, getting email addresses. So I did have my email sign up. I had a QR code that they could scan that was a audiobook playlist. So it had like clips of different audiobooks you could get from librofm.com that were kind of like nostalgic book reads. And I was selling merch as well. So that's something that, had my name on it, had the book fair name on it. And then I did my tickets through Eventbrite. So I did have access to all of their emails. So I did send an email after, thanking everyone for coming, sharing some of those resources again. And then I did put a survey, and I offered, I think, like a, $10 gift card somewhere if they, as a drawing, if they gave me some feedback, which was awesome. But I'm also a huge fan of giveaways and raffles. Like, I enter every contest I see. So if, there's a place to put in my name and number, my business card for a ticket, I'm doing it. And a lot of companies are willing to, we had so many companies just give away so much stuff. We had a 4-pack of like a wine tasting at a vineyard. We had books. We had gift cards to like escape rooms. I mean, you just have to ask, and that makes the draw of like, hey, I'm going to win something, or I want to stick around to see if I'm the winner. So I do think all those things can definitely help with engagement.
Great examples, I think, for people to hold on to. I do have a question for you that I don't know if we talked about ahead of time. Was just thinking about like the not so fun part of doing a public facing event is like what would your advice be to a planner who maybe is getting contracted to do or thinking of doing their first public facing event, like when it comes to just like the logistics of like permitting or figuring out even where can you host? Like, what are your tips and tricks? Maybe some things you had to learn the hard way.
Yeah, that was one thing I wanted to touch on too, is the difference in logistics of planning a public facing and more of a corporate or private event, because I feel like there are more considerations for a public facing event. Like I said, you have a really broad audience and you may not know exactly who's attending, whereas, some other events you probably have a guest list. So yeah, definitely accessibility is one, making sure that, there are ramps, there are accessible bathrooms, there's an elevator, food considerations. So if you are selling food or if you are offering free food, making sure everything is labeled, that you have vegetarian, vegan, gluten-free options. I like an affordable, like an accessible pricing as well. If you are doing a ticketed public event, just because, this is your community and you want a lot of people to attend. So making that accessible. But yeah, permitting and logistics, I would just say take as much time as you can, start as early as you can. I wanted to have a tattoo artist at my book fair, and they were really, really strict and said I had to get this like $300 permit to have a tattoo convention. And it was like a state thing. And they wouldn't, I was like, well, what if the person has like insurance and they've got their LLC and everything. And they're like, no, we need this document. So I didn't end up doing it, but that was something I didn't even know was a thing. So talking with your venue, and making sure it has, access, load in and load out access was also a thing that, I had to consider with vendors. They're bringing in a lot of trolleys and books and they want an easy space to load in and load out. And then, bathrooms, having some gender neutral bathrooms, having free water. And then the other thing I would say would be safety. So if you're doing a larger event, so I've, also worked at South by Southwest, which is gigantic. And I wasn't on like the actual planning team. I was on more of like the venue volunteer side, but the planning that they have to do, in regards to safety and permitting, you really can't start planning that, early enough, and it's constantly going to be changing. So I think really taking a big picture look at it before you start planning, and then, all the little details of the fun stuff is super easy, but think about contacting your city and the venues.
Yeah, I think your venue, as you pointed, is a great resource. I know one thing I did when I first moved to Seattle that was entertaining was I think the like special events committee here in Seattle allows you to, it's just open, essentially like open hearings for people. They have event planners who are the people planning these public facing events, or event hosts like Seafair, for example, here in Seattle. They have to actually like present their plan. And there's a member of like the police departments there, the fire department, the city, all this stuff. But you as like a public person can just go and listen in on this. And I'm nosy and was trying to figure out like who does events here. And so that was really fun to actually listen in and hear some of those things that I don't even have to think about usually. Like, again, my large sporting events, I'm not usually a part of the security plan, but it was like, oh, wow, the considerations for a parade or even just, a market or something like that is really interesting to get started. But there's a lot of resources out. And I know now, like back then, there wasn't AI as widely used as here. Like you can have AI at least get you started of like, what are the things I'm not thinking about? And then to your point, go to your venue or your city with like a little more understanding of like, oh, this is the question I should ask. Because yes, you would not want to host an event without having gotten the proper permits or anything. I'm just thinking of like other best practices for some other public facing, like you talked about entertainment, but I just think even like as an event host or planner, music is so important. Maybe you can't afford a live band or a DJ, but like think from your own perspective, be empathetic of like what makes you feel comfortable when you walk in. And I remember I walked into like a concert venue that was doing a little pop-up market and I walked through it and I remember it being like silent. That might not have been true. Maybe the music was just like super quiet, but it was like kind of awkward. There wasn't a lot of people there. And I'm like, this is making me not want to like browse. I want to kind of get in and get out because I didn't know. I just had popped by versus if it had, some music going, maybe somebody nicely greeting people there or just even like walking around and talking to other vendors so I could see, oh, there's other people here. Because that's the other hard part of like doing these public facing events is you need a couple people to come in first to then show others, oh, there's, people in here. So that's another thing too. I would think of like, who's your core community that you could either give free tickets to or early access to make sure they're in there. And that kind of can help you create that buzz for your public facing event. I'm interested, Ryan, for this next question is like, how do you evaluate when a public event is successful, like beyond just attendance numbers, or do you mainly use attendance numbers to evaluate your events?
Yeah. So, I mean, definitely I do consider the numbers. And for my book fair, it was exciting because I was like, I just want to sell 50 tickets. I just want to sell 50 tickets. So I wasn't focused on the money at all. I just wanted, I guess, the social proof that it was a good idea and people wanted to attend. But the way I feel like, so, I mean, attendance is great. Sometimes you can judge it by income, if you made a lot of sales. But my favorite part was just seeing all the social interactions. So I actually like screenshotted and screen recorded all of the stories and the posts and the tagging that people were doing just to kind of remind myself like, oh my gosh, people really had a great time. They wanted to share this with their friends. People were commenting, oh, I didn't know about this. Where can I go? Where can I, go to, when's the next one? So I really love seeing like that social excitement and, even people bringing it up now, like, hey, when are you doing the next one? So or if people are there at the event, taking pictures and telling their friends about it, just having a really good time. I had some people who were, they dressed up like in 90s outfits. They had like tie dye and fanny packs. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they're like super excited to attend. So I love seeing people that are really, just taking that memory away with them. So I feel like emotionally, that's more how I'll track if it was successful. Sometimes with clients, you do have a goal of attendance or money, but if you have those cool interactions or those cool activations, that is what's going to make people want to come and want to donate money or want to come to your next event or support your organization. So I think, that's important as well.
Yeah. And I mean, I think I would just tell people too, like things take time. I mean, that's something we've learned as hosts of even like our Better Events conference is while we would love it to be the minute we announced we were doing a conference, the floodgates opened and 1,000 people were like, I have to come. But that's not the reality. It usually takes time for people to like see something and understand it's happening. Two, to then be convinced if it's just their free time and getting there, or if it's, paying a low ticket price or anything, there's still a friction with that. And so, yeah, I think finding a goal, you can have an attendance goal. We were with you, Ryan. We had a similar one that was like, we want this many, but it was really more like revenue. We didn't want to lose money. That was like our bare bones. And I hope if you're an event organizer, please do not be losing money on events unless you have an amazing sponsor who's going to help you cover it. But like, if you're someone who's creating an event because you're passionate about it, you should hopefully at least break even. And then, yeah, maybe identifying what's another goal. But I love what you said about capturing all the positive feedback, because I do think there's a power in getting some of that anecdotal evidence, whether it's fuel for you to say, okay, I want to host another one, or maybe I want to try something different, or just to make you feel better because maybe it's not a huge moneymaker and you just want to see there was that positive. We talked about what made us smile earlier, like that just makes you smile. I think is just so valuable, but also that can help inform you if this is an event that you're like, I want to do this again, or like, what were the people talking about and posting about? Was it these 7 things and not this other thing that you spent a lot of money on? Or that one vendor was really hard to work with and like it didn't actually have an impact. So I think it's hard to have afterward. I feel like in hindsight, it's hard to have those metrics. So in the pre-planning process, like identifying here's what my goals are can help you, even if they shift in the planning process, like help you make sure you're finding success. Because I'm thinking of like some of my public facing, like even the markets I go to, it is one that I'm sure they have someone who counts how many people come, but I'm sure they rely more on like the vendors saying, hey, was it worth my time, worth my money? Another good follow-up listeners would be to go back and listen to our episode. I think it was 248 with Sarah talking about makers markets, because I think she had a lot of good nuggets too, more on the vendor management side if you're someone who does public events, but that's a whole nother I'm sure, Ryan, we can do a whole nother episode talking about that too, because there's so much there. But any final lessons you have for our listeners about public facing events that they could apply to their other public facing events or their private corporate events?
Yeah, definitely. So I think my final takeaway would just be to bring in some of that fun, bring in some of that excitement, bring in some of that surprise. I did one nonprofit social event. So it's like they don't have to necessarily impress their employees. Like these people are just kind of coming to hang out with each other. But we had a speakeasy. And so at a certain time, we had this door that opened that they didn't know was there, and people could just go in and hang out. And it was seriously just a couple of couches, some lighting, some desserts. So it was part of the desserts that we already had. We had this extra room attached. So, just bring in some of that surprise to your corporate events. And yeah, it'll be one of those moments that people capture and talk about and, make them look forward to going to the next event. What about you?
I love a surprise and delight. That is like
Yes.
my absolute favorite thing. I was traveling last month and we went on a food tour, and that was like constant. I went on 2 food tours actually, and both of them had a surprise and delight. I was like, I just love, everyone loves expecting something, but then there's something like extra sweet about, oh, I didn't think it would go. So like your speakeasy idea, it's like, oh, I didn't know that would happen. Or I'm just thinking about like the public facing, it's like they're doing a giveaway, or there's all of a sudden a meet and greet with someone, or a surprise. A lot of people I think of like surprise performer, which I think doesn't hit as much as you would think it did, versus somebody dressed up walking around with something that like a bite you get to taste, would be interesting. Or your playlist even for your book fair, like that's just a cool idea that you can take with you after the event, and then hopefully reminds folks of it. So hopefully you've learned something here about public facing events, took a little bit of the fear out of it for you, or some of the lessons learned that Ryan and I have had. But that brings us to the end of our episode. And Ryan, you have our bonus tip this week.
Yes. So my bonus tip is to thank your volunteers. I have done a lot of volunteer coordination, and I think, a lot of people are lucky enough to have a really great volunteer base. And I just think thanking them during the event is super important. Make sure, you're noticing them, you're giving them breaks, things like that. Maybe bringing some surprise chocolate around. I know that's something Logan likes to do. But I feel like even after the event, whether it's an email, a handwritten thank you, I'm really into handwritten thank yous right now. And South by Southwest, they actually do like a volunteer party, which is really cool because they have a really large volunteer base. And so, a month after the event, after everybody's relaxed and calmed down, you get to celebrate, and they really thank their volunteers because, that event would not happen without them. So even if you only have 5 or 6, these people are taking time out of their day to, help you be part of your event. So yeah, be sure to thank them however you can.
That's a great one, Ryan. We love showing gratitude here on the podcast. Well, that brings us to the end of our episode. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Better Events Pod. You can send us an email at bettereventspod@gmail.com. You can connect with us directly on LinkedIn as well. We'd love to hear from you. Ryan, I'm going to include you in that plug as well. Their links are in the episode, but just mention that you've heard of us through the podcast and that little note before you hit connect. And if you want even more Better Events content, you can join our private community on Substack. And as always, we want to thank you for listening, and we'll be back in your feeds again next Wednesday.